Alrighty, this is I guess my first actual devlog in probably 2 to 3 months instead of just like a normal feature reveal. Anyways, I kind of want to talk about what's been going on. I have been posting many updates in regards to the plugin or anything like that. And to make a long story short, it has been receiving a giant art overhaul, ranging from the character to the firearm itself to the attachments. So pretty much everything that was in the game previously has been overhauled. It's still a work in progress. I'm not done yet. But in terms of parts, we currently have completely new firearm. We have new attachments, new muzzle devices. I haven't gone through and set up any of the images or anything yet. I still have to go through and do some more texture work to them. But we have a good bit. So to begin, we have our basic length handguard. We have two different barrels. So we have the 9-inch. No, sorry, this is I think this is actually a 10-inch. And then we have the 14.5-inch. We have the normal 3-prong flash hider, as well as we have a new suppressor. And we have, obviously, a new handguard. We have a new optic, we have a new upper and lower receiver, and it's probably easier if I just go into this mode and I'll just show you. So, we have all new parts, obviously. Finally went through, and thanks to a friend, I have gotten a lot better when it comes down to texturing. It's not perfect, but it's a big improvement over at least what the assets were previously. I still need to work on the skin of the character a bit, but it is better. I know there's some clipping here, but this is the first person mesh, so that's not actually going to be seen. The head's actually hidden. And the reason I went ahead and actually went this route is because if you recall from any of the videos beforehand or anything like that, the issue that I had was we were using the the shadows from the third person mesh always. So that gave us an issue of the animations the shadows really were quite poor. So one, the firearm didn't line up at all with the hands because they were playing two different animation sets. So now as you can see here, everything is actually lined up properly. Even though the head is invisible, we still got shadows being casted and all that fun stuff. So we have that set up. And I've also introduced another optic, which would be this guy here. We got a new mount for it, which would be the ATAC. So it's a 1-to-6 power. So I'm working on the reticle still. It needs to be resized some. But here's at 1 power, I go to 4, and I go to 8. So as you can see, the markings are a little hard to read, so I need to upscale kind of everything in that sense just to get it a little bit better. But it is a first focal plane optic, so I got to make sure everything scales and fits like it does in this video, or like what you're seeing. Well, we got all that set up, everything works and all that fun stuff. If you have not noticed, I've actually been working on my own GORE system as well. Now, this GORE system works for thin wall, like complete penetration, with no render targets, no scene capture, nothing. This is about as lightweight as you can possibly get for any sort of system this way. And you can have several holes. So we're at, let's see, that's 4. We can have a max of 8. Now, the material that I provided, you can obviously scale this up and down, it doesn't really matter. But it's just there, and it applies a decal over the impact. That also you have options to change the time as to when that decal will be destroyed. So just kind of stuff like that. And that's going to be applying to the GORE system that's coming as well. I've shown this off in a separate video, but I have blood and all that kind of stuff, and it's set up in a fairly simple manner to actually use. So yeah. Next up, we have, I don't know if you've seen it in any of the other videos, but a running animation. Now, the difference between this and a normal running animation is this is all code driven. There's no actual animation happening. Like, none at all. And this is easily tweakable. You can change how fast the rate and all that kind of stuff goes, so how fast the bob is, so you can kind of make it match your movement speed a little bit better and all that fun stuff. Weapon collision has been reworked entirely, so we now support short stocking. So as you walk into a wall, the gun pushes into you, and once it gets past a certain point, we go into our high port. And then we can continue to get closer and go farther into high port until we back up all the way and we are back in short stocking. And same thing goes, if you look down, you go into low port, you look up, you're back into high port. So that whole system's been improved quite a bit. We have the manual high and low port that you can go into, obviously. We have adjustable length of pull. So here's the default. You can see how close I am to the optic here. Let me back up a bit. So here we are. We can see a little bit more. We can see pretty much a little bit extra of the threads on the buffer tube. That's how close we are. So if I extend this out all the way, yes, I know it's extremely far, and I've been importing everything and getting it set up, so ignore that. But when I aim now, as you can see, I am quite a distance away from the optic. And I still need to fix the bug where this is reversed, but that's the only way I can get this system to work currently. And now we are back and being close to it. So adjustable length of pull and all that fun stuff still works. And it is also shown off in the shadow quite as well. You can see how it actually gets moved around and affects your aiming a little bit. So he's pulling the gun in more when the stock's collapsed. So let's see, there's a couple other things. Oh, I reworked the reticle a little bit for the red dots and all that kind of stuff. Well, specifically the red dots. So basically how you adjust the brightness. So everything is still the same. It's still about as lightweight as I can make it. But we have much more range of control over the reticle brightness now. So you're not, limited to kind of a static base that you cannot go below, if that makes sense. So if I head over here to the night map, let me go ahead, move this forward a bit and add there we go, the night vision magnifier behind it. So here you can see I'm at full brightness. So same thing, I'll switch over to green. It's hogging up the night vision reticle or the night vision optic or magnifier a good bit. It's just way too much glow to it. It's too bright. So when I lower this down, I can lower this down another step. Now we are in night vision mode. You can't really see it without the magnifier, but if I bring the magnifier back up, you can see the reticle there just fine. Switch to green, you can see it all just fine. And then if I lower it one more time, we can now actually turn the reticle off completely. You cannot see it. It is actually off. We can increase it back onto night vision mode and then just fold it back to the side and bump it right back up to normal. So we can now actually turn the optics off. Let's head back out here. Let's do a quick, look at the character real quick, because this is my first time ever actually texturing up a character. Alright, so here's the character, and this would be the third person one. So this one is just a single mesh. It's not split up at all. But this is my first time really kind of attempting to set up character, do their skin. I think I did an okay job. It obviously needs improvement. My failed attempt at doing veins, I just need to go back and revisit how to do that and improve on it. Got little freckles and all that. And then we have the first person mesh, which is all the parts but we're split up. So we have a 3-part mesh that makes up our character. So that'll allow you to make it a little bit more modular if you wish, but this isn't hard-coded into the class. So this is actually set up in Blueprint. So if we head over here to the character blueprint here, you can ignore the pose. It's not actually following the master pose. That's why that's way out here. But we have our initial mesh, which in this case, that's just our torso. And then attached to that, we have our legs. And then attached to the torso again, we have our head. Now, the way this is going to be set up, because I wanted to have a full body for the first person view, but one thing that I've noticed a lot, and I absolutely despise it, and I don't understand why people continue to bother even doing this, they just take their camera, they attach it to the head of the full body character, and call it a day. That leads to some nasty head bobble effects, and it's it's just disgusting because they don't bother even making any sort of animations that at least attempts to compensate for it. Now with this kind of setup, you have a full body. You can look up and down, see your legs, and all that fun stuff just fine. You would have free look, see everything. The difference is they're going to be driven by different animations. So what I mean by that is because we are using the torso as kind of our main part of the body and the legs as a secondary, the legs can be playing their own set of animations. So the legs could be playing their own walking animation. However, even though the head bone on the legs part of the skeleton may be, moving up and down as it's giving it kind of a head bob, the actual torso is not going to be moving. So we don't have to worry about any of that effect. It's not going to get translated into your camera. It's not going to affect it. So that's going to be the end goal. Once I finish setting that up, I need to set up some walking animations, obviously. I haven't done that yet, but in my head it makes sense. And that really should work without much of an issue. And then head, I just did this like a matter of a minute ago. I just set the master pose component to follow along with the torso. So that way, as I look, well, you can see it in the shadow. As I look down at the top left there, the head and all that kind of stuff follows. It's blending with it because it's playing the same animation. So you can look down, and of course I can't look down quite far enough, but I promise you there are legs there. I set a cap somewhere for the, let's see, is it the lean angle? Yeah, look up and down. I don't know. Let's do, I think 90 was the stock limit. Yeah, if I look straight down, you can see the bottom of the shoe. You can see the boots. So there are legs there, just to prove it. Put that back to, yeah, I'll just leave it at 90. I'm not too concerned about it. I'm still bringing a crap ton of stuff in. Alrighty, so, on to the what do you call it? Well, in this case, Penetratable Target. So I'm eventually going to be moving this over, I think, into a component, just so instead of having a dedicated actor, you can add it onto existing actors and kind of have the effect from there. And you can just pass in parameters as to what you want that actor to have as a damageable part. So currently we have a max hole count, so how many times you shoot it, how many holes you're going to get. So it's kind of like the GORE limit, because the more you have, the more you're going to end up, the more performance you're going to end up having lost just through the material. So next up being the material index. This is why I want to move it to a component as well, because right now I have it set to the first material, so it'll be the torso that actually receives the damage. So if I rotate this guy 90 degrees so we can, or 180 degrees so we can see him in the light, and I shoot him, we get some blood, we get some wounds, and I can find there's a couple spots here where they're thin enough where they'll actually receive a hole. I like that. So you can see kind of how it applies on top, and then they'll have the decals. That will give it a little time, they'll disappear, and you'll just be left with basically the masked, if I can speak right, GORE on top of it. So this is still a work in progress. I'd like to set up some kind of way to make it, give it the bleeding effect or something like that. So as the longer the time goes on, the more that the wound actually spreads. So if I shot him in the arm and he's bleeding, well, by now, his whole hand and all that kind of stuff should have a red effect to it. But I think I'm missing. There's no shots. But you can see kind of roughly how it works. Pretty straightforward. You don't get the greatest result as you're not using render targets, and the mesh setup makes a big difference as well. So if I were to go ahead and actually switch to this to the head, with any luck we should see a better result. So I'll change it to 2 real quick. Shoot him in the head. Alright, nothing in the back. And I feel like I may have forgotten to set something up. So that's on index 2. Index 0, 1, 2. That should be the head. That's the head. Yeah, that's all set up. So I guess there's just a problem there that I got to go through and try to figure out. and come up with some kind of way to make it a little bit more reliable. Because obviously, as you saw, that was not the greatest result. Anyways, let's see. I gotta look through and see if there's anything that I have not covered yet. Alrighty, pretty much last up, I figured I'd go ahead and show the actual models that would have been set up and added. And then the next one that's actually a work in progress, because there's, I think, only a couple more things that I have to do before I can submit this for the update, and we'll finally have the art overhaul at least underway. So after that, it'll be a lot easier just to continue with what I was doing before, adding new parts, and not really having to worry too much about it. Because this has been mostly just a ton of replacing and a ton of deleting for the old stuff. Anyways, so we have a new 30mm mount, and that is for our new optic here. Fancy little guy. And then on top of that, we have the new hollow sight. This is the one that I'm not 100% sure I've done actually texturing. This is what I've been doing so far in the pretty much a couple minutes before this video. I got to this stage and I decided to go ahead and instead just start recording. I needed a break. I've been working on this art crap for, I think it's near a month straight. But I think it looks okay. My skills when it comes down to art has definitely improved. So if we take a look and see how the old one was textured, it's a decent bit of an improvement. Because the way I used to go about doing this was I would start with a pre-made material and try to work off that, which oftentimes left to very ugly results, as you can see here just in the textures themselves. I have started learning unwrapping, so horrible seams are not really going to be nearly as much of a problem, and same thing I've gotten better with when it comes down to packing. So that should allow me to get much more use when it comes down to the UV space. Baking skills are a little bit better. I kind of have a better idea of what's going on. I understand now that it's a good idea to actually break the mesh apart when you bake, so you don't end up with this kind of crap, because this looks horrendous underneath. But yeah, it's definitely gotten a good bit better, especially now that I've learned to utilize the tools that I'm working with to a much greater extent. Then we have the flash hider, and then the suppressor, which is not done being textured at all. As you can see, there's no real wear on it. And then we have the receivers. I forgot. So we have the rest of the parts. So we have the 10-inch barrel. The 14.5-inch looks the exact same. It's nothing special. We have the new handguard. Obviously, everything had to be remade to actually fit. So, to fit the new firearm. I didn't realize how much I overscaled the old one, especially when it came down to the actual Picatinny rails on top. None of my current parts or attachments would fit the new receivers or the new handguard. Like, that just at all. I didn't realize how far off I actually was when it came down to that. We have the new handguard. I'm slowly kind of starting to understand in marmoset texturing things like oils from your hands and scratches. I'm not the greatest when it comes down to where things should be placed. I made an attempt to have a carbon buildup here because the gas block is literally sitting on the 10-inch barrel right in front of the handguard, or right inside the handguard. So I tried to add a little bit of carbon buildup just as an effect. I probably should have built it up just a tiny bit with the height map, but it is what it is. We have the Magpul MOE handguard. Marmoset, unfortunately, one thing that drives me nuts, and same thing with Quixel Mixer. I don't understand why this is not just a bare bones base feature. They do not come with mirroring or any sort of symmetry. So to have the stippling be as close as I could get it on both sides, instead of just, taking a brush, snapping a line, snapping a line, snapping a line, snapping a line, and doing the same thing as best I could on both sides, I ended up actually making this doing it once on one side, taking a screenshot, bringing that into GIMP, make a brush that follows it roughly as close as I could get it, come back into Marmoset, stamp that brush on one side, then flip it and stamp it on the other side. That's the way I can get it as close as I could. It's not 100% exact on each side, but it's pretty close. Same kind of deal for the the actual logo, which I don't know if I'm allowed to have, but shh. Anyways, then we have the CTR stock. Again, I really kind of yiffed the the grooves here, but it is what it is. Like I said, slowly getting better. And then finally we have the receivers, which have been my little bit of a pride and joy, as this was my first actual part that I really made 100% like from the ground up to this with a bunch of effort. So this is my first actual, well, no, this will be my second CAD part that I actually made. So this is actually made in Fusion 360 and then brought into Moi 3D. As you can see, I have a issue here. I need to go back into Blender, fix that up, and hopefully I don't have to unwrap it again, and it'll just be a clean little fix. But it didn't really show up in Blender. That was the thing I was struggling to see, because it shows up in Marmoset and Unreal, but again, not Blender. But anyways, and that kind of helped me really get a nice workflow going for the high and low poly. So the way that it made it easier for me to see everything, crap, I don't even know if I can, yeah, because I don't have those rigged to anything, but it helped me get pretty good bakes in. So, like for example, the bolt release, that's a bake, that's not a bake, this is a bake, this is a bake. Cut the threads in, we have a bake here. And there's also in the castle nut and in the buffer tube, where the buffer tube sits in the lower receiver, obviously there's threads there as well. The only threads I left visible was ones for the stock, because I thought it actually looked kind of nice. A little hard to see, but there's actual threads there. So if I were to have free look and look down, I think it would look pretty good. Just a nice visualize, or just a nice kind of touch on top. Again, I'm learning. I'm a programmer, not an artist, who is attempting to act like an artist. Grooves in the bolt, those are baked. I'm not a huge fan of the chrome-ish kind of bolt carrier group. I wish, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do with it exactly. Because I feel like when it comes down to lighting, it is way too reflective. And then other times it's not. So if I have a somewhat of a shadow, you know, I see it. It looks nice. Detail, all that looks good. I come over here to where I have some light bouncing off of it. It doesn't look too bad compared to how we were looking in here, but it's a little bit too bright. And when I bump up the roughness, it kind of takes away when it's in the dark scenes. And I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it all out at this point. Now we can go inside. Nothing really fancy in here. Got a slight problem that I did not see. Another thing I've noticed in Marmoset, I'm not sure, I feel like this might be my doing. When you texture from one side, it has a tendency to go to the other. So for example, when I stamped this on, I end up having Meow Freedom Defense USA printed right here on the inside as well. And I had that issue with the EOTech, and it's just kind of the same issue. But anyways. Yeah, that is pretty much everything. It's just been mostly a giant art overhaul that I've been spending the past month doing, when I initially intended on only spending about 2 weeks. And I figured by 2 weeks I'd be done. And I'm still going, so I'm bored. Anyways, if you're interested in the plugin, there's a link down in the description below. I'm hoping I'll be able to have the update submitted for approval within a week from the release of this video, maybe sooner. And then once that's submitted, everything I know is, good to go. Then we're going to start making some improvements to the code, because there's some things I want to make some optimization improvements, and a couple other things just for the sake of the end user. If they're going to actually using the plugin in C++, I want them to be able to kind of step through it a little bit easier. So I'm going to have to be doing some cleanup, because I've organized all the header files nice and neat. The CPP files are a little bit of a cluster. It's not really, things aren't categorized how I should have made them. Anyways, I think that's pretty much everything. Eventually I'd like to do an overhaul of the test map, add like a proper shooting range or something like that, but that's not in the cards right now. So, that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one.